Hey, welcome to St. Pete Sucks. I'm Kevin, and I wanted to do a video today regarding sowing seeds. There's a lot of content out there online, and I've sowed a couple thousand seeds now and have tried a number of different strategies. But wanted to do sort of an in-depth, up-close look at a strategy that watched a video from Cactus Quest. Hunter, I think his name is, was doing this. So, first you want to get some hydrogen peroxide. I use the 3% kind. I think that's probably your best bet. And then get some highly fertile seeds. One thing that I've noticed is, probably got seeds from 5 or 6 different suppliers, and Mesa Garden is tried and true. They have a really high germination rate. You'll see at the end of this clip that I have also gotten some seeds from Madam Cacti. Those also have really high germination rates. So with the seeds and the hydrogen peroxide, you're going to need some volcanic rock. Some people use really organic substrates. I've really liked just using volcanic rock. Pretty small size. I think 1/8 inch, and then some vermiculite. Obviously, you want this stuff to be as sterile as possible, so I'm trying to use a new bag when I can. I like to label all of my pots. I actually don't like to use the sticks, especially with seedlings, because I've actually disturbed more in that using that process. So I just write right on the thing, and acetone takes it off in the long run. So I fill it up with some volcanic rock, and I will soak it in the hydrogen peroxide. You can see here, you want to give it a pretty good soak. You want it to fill, all those pores in the volcanic rock, and do a good job of sanitizing and killing whatever it was that was on my hands or in the pots or on the volcanic rock. So let the hydrogen peroxide do its thing. I usually let it sit there for a while, maybe 5-10 minutes, really soaking in, especially because this is also going to be primarily all the moisture that ends up in the humidity chamber while the seeds are germinating. You can see there it's about, I don't know, 1/4 inch of hydrogen peroxide that's sitting in. Next step, when you take one out at a time, and I sprinkle vermiculite on the top, and you'll see, it might seem like quite a bit, but what I'm trying to do is even out the surface a fair amount. What you'll see later in the video is that a lot of the vermiculite ends up falling into the cracks after germination. So, try and level it off. It'll just make spreading the seeds a little easier. So you can see today, for this video, I was doing a lot of Copiapoa. So the seeds are rather small, and so what I also like to do is use a clear jar over a white background just to really help me see the seeds, just for disbursement. And also I like to use my finger just to kind of collect a couple, 5 to 10, and I just like to, rub them between my fingers and let them sort of fall naturally. I don't really squeeze too much. You don't want to like crack the seeds or crack the outside of them. But really, I mean, you'll see here, it just kind of gives like a nice even disbursement of the seeds, and doing 5 to 10 at a time allows me to kind of create an even distribution throughout the substrate. So from here you can just get in the close-up. You want a little bit of space between them. Don't go overboard. If they're touching, a couple are touching, they'll be fine. In fact, a lot of clusters end up surviving quite well. I actually have some Kaput Medusae seeds as well from Madam Cacti that I'm trying to sow, and so these things are just really funky looking. So just want to get a close up of how different they look from a normal Astrophytum seed. And then one thing to note is that when I'm done sowing them, I'll actually put it back in the hydrogen peroxide and let it sort of soak through, and you can see the vermiculite kind of popping, and it helps bring the seeds down in. It also kind of soaks the sides of the seeds, and it kind of avoids pulling too much of that moisture up and out. So here's some seedlings from about a month and a half ago. They're doing pretty good. These are like some sort of lizard skin Astrophytum that I got. This is actually some of the few seeds from a source called Unusual Seeds that actually popped. The rest did not. It was actually a pretty disappointing bunch of seeds. Here's some more. This kind of gives you an idea of the disbursement of the volcanic rock to vermiculite. This is after about a month to a month and a half, as I mentioned. Or sorry, no, these actually were sowed about 2 weeks ago. So these are actually from the first batch of seeds actually that I've been able to grow for my own plants through pollination. So um, you'll see though that the vermiculate's starting to fall down. You'll see everything's really still super saturated. You can see some of the really fine roots starting to come off of some of these, and I think some of the concern with the volcanic rock is, is it sturdy enough? Are they really going to be able to hold themselves up? And so the vermiculate's kind of there to help them get started, and then they really just go to town on the volcanic rock, especially as they get to that like 1 to 2 month phase, as you'll see in some of these other clips. And apologize for the shaky video. I wanted to zoom in quite a bit for added detail. So this is kind of like a view of most of the small pots that was sown about a week ago, and you can still see the vermiculate's pretty heavy. That container there was actually the container that I used for my humidity chamber on Amazon. I've really enjoyed it. I actually put a little bit of shade cloth over it as well initially. Um, so now we're jumping into some seeds from about a month and a half ago that I've sown, and you can see there's even less vermiculite. Well, I guess these are actually somewhat newer, but the ones that were in those smaller pots, the vermiculite has actually settled down even further into that pot. And it almost looks like they're growing entirely in the volcanic rock substrate. So you can kind of see there that like the vermiculates, basically drop down in there, and it's just the cacti and the volcanic rock that are left. These are actually some ferrocactus that did incredibly well in this substrate and have just been going to town growing for the last month and a half. So really excited to see what these turn into and see if I get lucky and get any funky ones in here. But the other thing to point out, since these are about a month and a half to 2 months old, you'll see some of the volcanic rock is starting to actually, harden off on top and dry out. I will keep an eye on these, and, this is fine. If it starts to dry out a bit too much, I will spray it with, I use just some reverse osmosis water because it's also somewhat acidic. And I'll just spray that over and try and keep it pretty humid in there. But what's nice about those containers is they've actually got a small channel on the outside. So a lot of that liquid from the beginning, when I close the chamber, will sit in that, and it'll stop the containers from actually sitting submerged in water, but it'll generate a bit more humidity. And you can actually see sometimes they'll explode. This, I think they got a little too hot maybe at one point. But those are the two problems. Sometimes they'll just like pop, and then other times, obviously, you'll see the moldy ones. I don't remove these. I just sort of let them kind of like fizzle out on their own. I've found that I end up creating more disturbance and more problems if I try and pick these out one by one. So I'll sort of just let those go and keep an eye on them. And then here's some seedlings from about I want to say 9 to 10 months ago. I sowed them in the fall last year. And they're doing really well. I was really impressed. I burnt them pretty bad late last year. You can still see some of them are pretty red, but a lot of the green's starting to come and fill out. And yeah, I'm excited to see what these turn into. But this was using the same methodology, and then just earlier this year, I potted these up into a little bit larger pots in a different substrate. So I actually moved away from the pure volcanic. And here's some loaves for you. And there again, also there's a little bit of organic in there, with just like a turfus topsoil just to help keep the stuff on the surface pretty dry. So yeah, I mean, hopefully this is helpful for everybody that watches it. Hopefully the close-ups help to give you a little bit more detail. And ultimately this helps people keep sowing more seeds for some of these species that are a lot of fun to grow and a lot of fun to watch mature and turn into some really funky specimen.